We begin with the state of Canada-U.S. relations. Canada is the only G7 nation without a trade deal with the U.S. and instead faces some of the highest U.S. tariffs in the world at 35% on non-CUSMA compliant goods. Well, we caught up with the Prime Minister a short time ago at Vancouver's Pride Parade.
As August 1st creeps closer, the clock's ticking on trade deals that could reshape North America's economic map. Most of our agreements are nearly wrapped up, or so we hope, but Canada's proving to be a stubborn holdout. It's not that we're striking gold with them. Honestly, it feels like Canada's ready to just eat the tariffs and move on. No back and forth, no real negotiation, just a quiet shrug. Meanwhile, the guy calling the shots from the White House isn't exactly rolling out the welcome mat. Instead of offering a handshake, he's loading up what feels like a trade shotgun and calling it diplomacy. Canada's starting to look like it's been left out in the cold, and the pressure's mounting to hammer out some kind of deal, likely one that comes with a side of tariffs. Picture this: a 35% tariff slapped on every Canadian import unless they sign a deal the White House likes. Not the one they already agreed to, mind you, but a shiny new one, crafted under a ticking clock. Here's where it gets interesting. Canada didn't throw a fit or fire off angry tweets. They just smiled, nodded, and started shipping their goods elsewhere. That silence? It's deafening in the world of diplomacy, louder than any public meltdown. So who's really walking away here? As August 1st looms, the White House is turning trade talks into something straight out of a reality TV cliffhanger. The USMCA, that trade deal we all thought was rock solid, is still technically alive. Over 90% of Canadian exports to the US should slide in duty-free, as long as they play by the rules. Sounds perfect, right? But there's a catch. A dusty old rule from 1962 called Section 232. It's like a legal sledgehammer, and it's being swung with gusto. Steel, aluminum, copper, auto parts. Canada's getting hit with tariffs as high as 50%. It's not just a jab, it's a full-on gut punch. Canada thought they had a deal with the USMCA, a handshake they could trust. But these tariffs feel like a betrayal, a sneak attack dressed up as negotiation. The White House is cranking up the volume, threatening to blanket everything from Canada with a 35% tariff if they don't cave by August 1st. That's not a friendly nudge. It's a glowing neon sign screaming, "Do what I say or pay the price." It's not about finding common ground. It's about flexing muscle and expecting Canada to fall in line. But Canada's not playing along. Their leadership, Prime Minister Mark Carney, Minister Dominic LeBlanc, and the provincial premiers are all on the same page. No deal is better than a bad one rushed to dodge a tariff bullet. They're not just posturing, they're digging in their heels, refusing to be strong-armed. Look at the numbers, and you'll see Canada's not just sitting there taking hits. Their exports to the US have slid from 75.9% of their total trade last year to 68.3% by May 2025, one of the steepest drops we've seen. That's not a minor tweak, it's a full-on pivot. Nearly a third of Canadian companies are pulling back from US trade entirely, and 37% are sourcing materials from other countries. This isn't a tantrum, it's a calculated shift. The USMCA might still exist on paper, but the trust it was built on? That's long gone. Canada's left with a choice. Do they try to renegotiate with someone who's already broken their word? Or do they brace for impact and chart their own course? The White House might think it's running the show, but Canada's rewriting the script. While the guy in the big chair is busy waving tariffs like a magic wand, Canada's leadership is staying cool and collected. They're not begging for a better deal. They're restructuring their entire approach. The USMCA's rules are still in play, but Canada's not waiting around for a pat on the back. They're quietly building resilience, turning away from the drama and focusing on their own game plan. The real showdown's coming in July 2026, when the USMCA's joint review kicks in. That's when the parties sit down to decide whether to renew the deal for another 16 years or let it start unraveling. The White House thought it could use that review as leverage, but Canada's not sweating it. They're gearing up for 2026 with a clear-eyed strategy, not a last-minute scramble to avoid August's tariffs. Canada's not just playing defense, they're laying the groundwork for something bigger. Take Bill C-5, passed in June 2025. It's not just some bureaucratic reshuffle. It's a bold move to streamline trade across provinces, speed up infrastructure, and tie interprovincial business to Arctic supply chains. Canada's not doubling down on US exports. They're rewiring their economic backbone. Exports to the US dropped from 75% to 68% of their total trade in just a year. That's not a retreat, it's a deliberate recalibration. Canadian companies are sourcing from places like Southeast Asia and Mercosur nations, building new trade bridges while the White House swings its tariff hammer. August 1st might be the deadline the White House is hyping, but Canada's got its eyes on 2026 when the real negotiations happen, not for a press conference, but for a lasting deal. And then there's the Arctic. Canada's not just holding ground, they're claiming it. Bill C-5 didn't just tidy up trade rules, it launched a full-on Arctic strategy. They've appointed Virginia Mers, an Inuit leader from Iqaluit, as Canada's first Arctic ambassador, giving the North a voice on the global stage. New consulates in Anchorage and Greenland are sending a clear message. Canada's northern ambitions don't answer to Washington. They're backing it up with serious cash. 6 billion Canadian dollars for radar, clean energy, and logistics, plus another $420 million for military and Inuit-led surveillance teams. This isn't just posturing, it's a stake in the ground. The Arctic's no longer a backwater. It's a treasure chest of lithium, cobalt, and rare earth minerals, the kind of stuff the world needs for electric cars, tech, and even weapons. Canada's working with Inuit communities, not suits in Ottawa, to control how those resources are tapped. The message to the White House is simple: no respect, no access. While the White House is busy chasing headlines with trade deals in Japan, the UK, Indonesia, and the Philippines, Canada, America's biggest trading partner, didn't even get a seat at the table. The logic from Washington? Canada's got the USMCA, so why bother? But that's where the misstep happened. Tariffs started piling up: 25% on steel and aluminum in February, 25% on general goods by March, and a crushing 50% on metal products by June. Now, with August 1st on the horizon, the threat of a 35% tariff on everything looms large. But instead of locking Canada in, it's pushing them away. Those tariffs aren't building loyalty, they're shredding it. Canada's not just losing sales, they're losing faith in the US as a partner. Their exports to the US are down, and they're not waiting around for an apology. They're rewriting their trade map, pivoting to new markets and leaving the US to deal with the fallout. Here's the kicker: Canada's not alone. Mexico got a similar tariff threat letter, and instead of caving, they sat down with Canada for bilateral talks. No White House fanfare, just a quiet agreement to work together. Down south, Brazil's facing a 50% tariff threat and isn't blinking. They're turning to BRICS and Asia for trade. Colombia, Argentina, and Chile are all starting to untangle themselves from US reliance. This isn't a spat, it's a slow-motion breakup. The US isn't just losing trade deals, it's losing trust. The kind you can't buy back with a tariff or a tweet. While the White House is busy staging its next big show, Canada's playing a different game, one that doesn't need a spotlight to win. The Arctic's becoming a flashpoint, and Canada's making moves while the US is stuck on the sidelines. At the recent Arctic Council handover from Norway to Greenland, Canada pulled Denmark, Norway, and Greenland into a tighter circle without much input from the US. Suddenly, America's seat at the table feels more like a folding chair. The US is still leaning heavily on China for over 70% of its rare earth minerals, with 90% of its refined supply coming through Chinese channels, according to the 2024 US Geological Survey. Canada, meanwhile, is building Arctic infrastructure and indigenous-led governance to lock in control of lithium, cobalt, and rare earths. Their message is clear: if you don't play fair on trade or respect indigenous sovereignty, you're not getting a piece of this pie. By late July 2025, the North American story is shifting fast. Canada and Mexico's quiet trade strategy doesn't need a White House stamp of approval. They're building unity while the US swings its tariff club. Brazil's looking east, and South America's starting to chart its own course. This isn't about loud walkouts or slammed doors. It's about empty chairs at the table. Nobody's storming off. They're just not coming back. Canada, Mexico, Brazil, they're not raising their voices, they're redirecting their futures. Tariffs can jack up prices, but they can't force trust. And when Canada turns away without a word, the US doesn't just lose a shipment of steel or lumber, it loses an ally who once thought a handshake meant something. So here we are, staring down August 1st, with the White House playing hardball and Canada playing chess. The question isn't just about trade numbers or tariff percentages, it's about what kind of leader America wants to be. Are we building bridges or burning them for a quick headline? Are we forging alliances or just shouting loud enough to drown out the sound of trust slipping away? The USMCA is still on paper, but its spirit's been gutted. Come July 2026, when the real talks start, Canada's not showing up to beg, they're coming to negotiate from strength. And that's the real story, not the tariffs, not the deadlines, but the quiet pivot of a neighbor who's done waiting for permission to thrive. What do you think? Is America leading or just flipping the table? Let us know, and stick around for more on the shifting tides of global trade.